is going on, true crime fans? I'm your host, Heath.
And I'm your host, Daphne.
And you're listening to Going West.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I stumbled upon today's case randomly online. I couldn't find any suggestions for it, which is really surprising because this is a very mysterious 1970s San Francisco case. And there is such a fascinating suspect in this one. Like, it feels, it's not solved, but it feels like it is. Like, Heath and I very much agree on this person of interest.
Oh, absolutely. And there's definitely some names that you guys will recognize in this case as well as we go along. So pay attention to that as well. But yeah, thank you guys for being here. And I don't think we have anything else to say before we dive into this one. So this is episode 535 of Going West. So let's get into it.
September of 1977, a promising 19-year-old college student in San Francisco disappeared after heading to study in her university's library. Horrifically, she was found brutally murdered the next morning in a locked faculty reading room, her belongings neatly piled nearby. With an attack on another local woman occurring in the same area that same summer, an intriguing, disturbing suspect came into play. This is the murder of Jenny Low Chang. Jenny Low Chang was born on February 5th, 1958 to parents Suk Yu and Young Hong Chang in Los Angeles, California. The daughter of Chinese immigrants, her dad actually traveled to the U.S. from Canton, China at the young age of 9 years old, settling with his family in San Francisco before later moving south to Los Angeles. And there in L.A., he met and married Jenny's mom, a fellow transplant from China, who had spent many years in California too. Jenny hailed from a large family, growing up alongside a sister named Shirley and brothers Eddie, Richard, Dennis, and Philip. So 6 kids in this family. She graduated from Woodrow Wilson High School in 1975, which is in Northeast LA, and headed for her dad's former hometown of San Francisco for college, enrolling at San Francisco State University. And it's kind of extra devastating that this familial connection is what brought her up to San Francisco, because only a couple years after she graduated is when something would happen at this very school.
Yeah, it's like she wanted to spend time where her dad had spent time in his earlier years, and sadly that ended up being the scenario in which her life was taken.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about her time at this college before what happened. So she was actually very quick to make a great impression there. She scored a position on the dean's list for 3 of the 4 semesters that she studied there. And in the late summer of 1977, she was heading into her 5th term at San Francisco State, so the beginning of her junior year. And for anybody who can't look at the photos that we posted on socials, this college is located in southwestern San Francisco. It is in the Lake Merced neighborhood, so it's a really beautiful spot near the bay. It's like surrounded by a lot of different nature areas.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's right by Lake Merced, of course, is in the Lake Merced neighborhood. It's by the San Francisco Zoo, etc. I imagine back in the 70s, it was even more green and lush and less residential. But I also saw it described online as, quote, "It's safe, not terribly exciting."
Okay, so it's just not a super happening place, but a great place to go and study.
You're not like downtown, but you're also not far from downtown. So I feel like it's actually probably a pretty nice place to be. It is a little bit tucked away, but that also makes it a little bit safer, which is good to know just based on what is to come. But anyway, so Jenny was majoring in biology with aspirations of becoming a dentist, and she very much kept her head down in school. Like, she studied hard. She mostly kept to herself because she kind of viewed her college experience as a conduit to her future career and not necessarily an opportunity to date or party. She was just trying to do college the way that college is supposed to be.
Yeah, the way it was actually intended to be.
Yeah. But outside of her studies, she did enjoy jogging, and she had recently taken up self-defense classes. A friend of hers named Lynn Hilliard recalled, quote, "She was quiet. Hardly anyone knew her. She didn't smoke or drink and wasn't a party person. She studied all the time." Another friend and fellow student named Pearl Yee echoed, quote, "She was very smart, so she excelled in school. She was very at peace and calm and together." Pearl also described her as practical, adding that, quote, "She saved money by sewing her own clothes." Now, Jenny mentioned to a few friends that she had a boyfriend down in Long Beach, and that is in the South Bay, just south of Los Angeles. And apparently they were in a committed long-distance relationship. So Jenny had no interest in dating up in San Francisco. You know, she had her few friends, and she really didn't reach outside of that small circle to fit in or to go out. She was happy with how she lived. And again, she was never known to smoke, drink, or take drugs. She was a very good, kind of responsible gal, and she was 19 anyway. She was still very young.
Yeah, so it's not like she's going to go out to the bars and drink anyway.
Yeah, unless she had a fake ID, which she did not.
Right. Doesn't seem like a Jenny thing to do.
Absolutely not.
Well, the last time Jenny was seen alive was on the evening of Sunday, September 11th, 1977, when she was headed out for a nighttime study session. Jenny's roommate, Ann Thorson, wow, that's a hard name to say, Ann Thorson, claimed that Jenny left their Merced Hall dorm room around 6 p.m., telling Ann that she was headed to the basement of the library building. But investigators weren't able to find anybody who saw her after Ann saw her leaving, despite the fact that she would have had to walk all across campus. So whether people were just kind of like not paying attention, or she just kind of blended in, or something else mysterious is going on here, we really can't be sure about that.
I mean, as we know, a lot of people didn't know her, so she probably, again, she kept her head down. She probably just minded her own business and walked and nobody noticed.
She had a small circle of friends and she kept to that small circle.
But that's important to note that there's very few witnesses in this case.
Exactly. But at some point in the evening, someone with exclusive access to a locked fourth floor reading room, room 432A, offered to bring 19-year-old Jenny there for a more private studying experience.
Okay, so an exclusive locked room, which probably would have been very enticing to her, even on a potentially already quiet Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, what an offer, right?
Yeah, she wants a more quiet place to focus on her work.
So this particular room was a private faculty reading room inside the J. Paul Leonard Library. And it had typewriters in that room as well.
So the faculty could use the typewriter. So that would also be something that could be enticing to Jenny, is she would have access to a typewriter if she wanted to work on her paper.
Right. And actually later found among her books and personal effects was an unfinished essay, which led investigators to believe that perhaps she had been lured to the fourth floor with the promise of being able to use one of these typewriters. But sadly, Jenny would never leave that room. The basement library closed for the day at 11 p.m., and at 6 a.m., Jenny's roommate Ann awoke to find that Jenny hadn't come home, which was completely unlike Jenny, who was a responsible homebody with a regimented schedule, and would not want to stay out all night for any reason, especially on a school night. And this was so worrisome and out of the ordinary that Ann actually reported 19-year-old Jenny missing early that morning. So she's like, this is like so far out of the realm of what Jenny would do. I just have to report her missing because she would never do this.
And she has nowhere to go. It's not like she has a boyfriend in the area whose room she could have stayed at. There's no reason for her to not sleep in her bedroom. And she couldn't have slept at the library because they closed at 11, like you just said.
Very true. Now, a few hours later, a psychology professor named Robert Suchek entered the reading room with his faculty card. Now, at first, Robert was so stunned by what he saw that he actually thought maybe some of the students were like playing a prank on him. Especially with it being September, they're slowly approaching, Halloween time, so he's kind of thinking, what am I looking at here? But when he realized with horror what had occurred in that room, he called campus police immediately. Because inside that reading room was the dead body of a student. And we'll dive into the details of how she was found in a minute here, but let's quickly talk about the shock of this news. So Anne, her roommate, was completely in shock about all of this, but agreed to identify Jenny's body at the coroner's office so that her autopsy could begin as soon as possible. Jenny's friend Pearl also viewed the body and remembers, quote, "In my mind, I remember saying, 'It's not you, let it be a mistake.' But it was very clear that it was her." Meanwhile, back in Los Angeles, Jenny's family was being notified of the devastating news as well. Her brother Eddie remembered, quote, "My father told me when I came home from school. It was a horrible piece of information. My mother was crying. My father said that she was stabbed to death." The entire campus was shocked, saddened, and just gripped in fear. Not only that one of their own was taken, but that it happened so violently on their campus. Jenny was the first murder ever to take place on this campus. To support the fears of the students, the campus housing director and campus police chief announced that they would add a second nighttime security manager to kind of curb any future potential crime as they tried to figure out exactly who was responsible for this. They also announced that hallway lights would now be left on 24 hours a day. But students quickly came forward to blame misconduct on the part of the university, saying that the lighting in the dorms and the parking areas was just too dim and inconsistent, and that the custodial staff was too large and mostly unknown to the students. Also, that strangers would often sneak onto campus and use the bathrooms there, which I find very strange that you've got all this security and these people roaming around, and that they would allow these people who don't go to school there to use the bathrooms?
Well, I think that's part of the problem is that the students are saying the security isn't tight enough that random people are allowed. It's not like they're like, hey, where's your student ID or whatever. This is also the 70s, but even I remember when I was in high school, security was kind of an issue, and I graduated in 2013. And I remember that being discussed as a problem, that they needed to have people by the entrances and exits of the school to check to make sure that strangers weren't coming on campus. And that was almost 40 years after this. So I guess I could see why, you have to staff all these people to do that. And maybe they thought that they didn't need to.
Yeah, and maybe that just wasn't like a huge part of their budget because they're doing the best that they can with what they've got. But at this point, students are saying it's just not enough.
But that's what's kind of interesting is that suddenly they're like, oh, we'll do this, and this. It's like they didn't suddenly get a bigger budget.
Yeah,
They're just scared.
Why didn't you just do that in the first place?
Well, that is literally the problem. That's what the students are saying. Like, hey, it shouldn't take somebody getting murdered for you to, tighten shit up around here. So Carmen Visaya, who is a friend of Jenny's, had known her since they started freshman year together and remembered Jenny's aspirations of becoming a dentist, especially after getting her own braces removed the prior semester. Carmen remembered, quote, "She was the type that would always talk to you when you had problems. She would always tease you in a good-natured way to keep your spirits up. She was the one who was telling me what classes to take." Now, Carmen last saw her on the afternoon of her murder at around 4:30 p.m. Remember, Heath told us that she left her dorm at 6 p.m., so this was shortly before when they were both eating an early dinner. Carmen remembered that Jenny would normally study in the second floor library, but that she set her sights on the basement library that Sunday evening in particular because the second-floor library was closing early. Now, that Sunday night, the top 4 floors of the library were closed and locked at 5 p.m., but a library in the basement was kept open until 11 p.m., as we know, which is likely where Jenny was headed until someone intercepted her journey and offered to take her to the private study area. An investigation into her murder began immediately, and actually, get this, Jenny's murder investigation was helmed by David Toski, who is known in San Francisco for his investigation of the Zodiac killer from a decade earlier. I'm sure even if you don't really know the case or you've seen the movie Zodiac, you will know who David Toski is.
Yes, you know Toski. Come on, guys.
That's Mark Ruffalo, right?
Yeah, it is.
And then also alongside David was Jack Cleary, who is remembered for his work on the zebra murders. So at the helm of the investigation are two
investigators.
Yeah, two investigators who were behind major cases. So you would hope that would make a huge difference, right? Well, it was a tough investigation from the jump because aside from her boyfriend in Long Beach, so nearly 7 hours south of San Francisco, by the way, Jenny had no known romantic history on campus or in the city of San Francisco. That was not her thing.
Right. So this is the first thing that police are trying to look at. They're like, is there any romantic connection to where somebody would want to hurt her?
That's like the best first place to look, like a scorned lover type situation. It often is that, or like a weird friend. But again, she didn't have a big circle. It was really small and tight, really consisting only of girls that were very similar to her. And so it was tough because they also didn't believe that Jenny had gone anywhere else before the library just based on how she was dressed and the fact that she was still carrying all of her books and her schoolwork with her. So it's not like she went to the store and there was a creep there who followed her back to school. There's they have nothing to go off of really.
Right.
Except for the fact, of course, that the crime was committed in a locked room that you needed a key card for, which we're going to talk about a lot today. And then, of course, Jenny was known for her sweet, very soft-spoken nature, and nobody that police interviewed could fathom anybody wanting to hurt her. She was not an enemy collector. So detectives were quick, like I said, to point out that she could not have accessed that room by herself because the library was closed and locked. And only those in possession of a key or a key card were able to access it. So, whoever had brought her there was most likely the person who took her life. Now, though Jenny's murder may have been an impulsive crime of opportunity, the crime scene left behind reeked of overkill and revenge. And whether that be, I want to say it now, revenge against Jenny or women, we can't say just yet.
Well, let's talk about the crime scene a little bit here, just to show you guys how horrific of a discovery this really would have been. Now, 19-year-old Jenny Low Chang was found nude on the floor of this reading room. She had been brutally beaten, stabbed, and sexually assaulted, and seminal fluid was found on her body, indicating that the motive behind the crime may have been sexual. Obviously, I say may have been because it's not clear whether or not this was the true motive.
Yeah, like maybe that was just, this sounds so morbid, but like a bonus.
Right, like just an opportunity.
Even though it does feel like probably was the motivation.
I mean, I think it was, but anyway. So she sustained at least 18 but as many as 30 stab wounds to her chest and abdomen from a small knife. In addition to her stab wounds, a heavy metal trash can found near her body had been used to beat her, though Jenny fought back valiantly. Broken furniture lay scattered throughout the room, likely from her attempt to injure her captor after he trapped her and cornered her in that room. And eerily, her clothes and schoolwork had been neatly piled by the door, though the sandals that she had been wearing had been flung about 15 feet from her body during the struggle. Her autopsy concluded that the murder had likely taken place between 7 p.m. and 11 p.m., so at least an hour after she left her dorm, after someone with exclusive access to that locked fourth floor reading room seemingly offered her entry.
And it's really awful because this clearly was incredibly brutal, but there was nobody around to hear it. There was nobody else there to witness it. So we can imagine that she was probably quietly studying when nobody was around. And then somebody said, hey, do you want to write your paper on one of the typewriters in the private faculty room? And she said, oh, sure. And then they took her in there and knew that nobody was going to come in, and they attacked her.
Yeah, it seems like a place that feels very random for a murder, because you would assume, like a library, there's probably a lot of people in there studying, but there's so many levels to this library and so many different rooms to lock yourself in that I feel like nobody really would hear a thing.
And it's Sunday, so I wish we knew really how many people were in there anyway, which is part of why I think the typewriter angle was so important here. But that's another reason why as well it feels like it was a crime of opportunity. It's not like somebody knew that Jenny was in the library and that's where they could kill her, especially because of that, the need for the key card. So in my head, mostly based on what we know that's to come, I would not be surprised if somebody saw her and decided to lure her there just like you worded it earlier.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Well, within 2 days of the murder, police had compiled a list of 400 names to sift through in hopes of just identifying a possible suspect. Though they admitted that they had few concrete leads, they did have some ideas. Now, unfortunately, over 1,000 keycards and keys had been distributed over campus before her murder, so it was going to be incredibly difficult to track down every single person who had access to one of these keys or keycards. The university acknowledged that about 200 school personnel had keys, and another 1,200 faculty and administrators had keycards as well, so they're looking through a shit ton of people trying to figure out how they can narrow down all these people that have access to this room.
And that doesn't even include like the infinite number of people who could have stolen or borrowed a card discreetly from someone, which is possible. I actually recently finished a thriller novel. It's fiction, but still, where the killer got around discreetly by using somebody else's borrowed card. So, I mean, who knows?
Yeah, so clearly the police have too many possibilities here, especially since there was no clear suspect in her personal life at all. So as police worked at this impossible task, the university continued their attempts at lessening the fears of its students and curtailing the amount of bad publicity. The university's president, Dr. Paul F. Romberg, issued a statement saying, quote, "While crime such as this occurs daily in urban settings, the circumstances surrounding the crime on our campus have caused me to initiate an immediate and thorough review of all security arrangements for San Francisco State University." He announced the advent of a telephone escort program for anybody needing someone to walk with them at night. And Dr. Romberg added, quote, "We encourage night faculty to talk to their students and urge them to proceed to parking areas and bus stops in groups after night classes."
The problem is that this action, which of course I see that they're trying really hard, but this doesn't account for the perpetrator potentially being a security officer.
Yes, and that is something that we are going to talk about. Romberg then concluded with, quote, "The university community joins me in deploring the tragic and senseless murder of Jenny Chang, and I have conveyed my deepest sympathies to her parents."
So the campus also implemented what they called a clumping system.
This is this is so weird, honestly, but go ahead.
So, no, I agree, because it's like, well, hold on. Basically, guys, the clumping program meant that there would be poles across campus that were painted a bright fluorescent color, and students could meet at the poles to walk back to their dorms together in clumps, which was, an interesting idea to keep the nearly 1,500 students spread between 3 buildings on campus safer. But it's also like how long is someone going to stand there waiting for, I'm at the pole, it's been 20 minutes at the pole.
Yeah, I just think it's kind of a silly idea. We painted these poles fluorescent colors so you guys can see them, and if you see somebody standing over there, just go ahead and walk with that person. It's like, you could do that without the fluorescent poles, I guess? I don't know. Anyway.
They're trying.
I mean, they are definitely trying, but...
Well, a handful of students would also be employed by the university and armed with walkie-talkies, working with campus police to walk the campus and just report any suspicious activity.
And I mean, I think this makes a lot more sense, like people having the ability to contact one another in case they see something. That makes sense.
Well, it's also nice because they put free telephones around campus so that anybody could call into the campus office and alert office admin when they were leaving or when they would be home, so that if somebody failed to conclude their route, there would be somebody out looking for them who knew the path that they were planning on taking. Like, they're trying a lot of different ideas out here, but it's also kind of scary because they don't know who did this. So they're saying, oh, in case this happens again, we'll at least know where you were going. And it's like, that is cold comfort, y'all.
Yeah. On top of that, it's like with this whole clumping idea, how do you know you're not going to get clumped in with a killer?
Well, yeah, it's exactly like I said with the security staff. Like, because they don't know who it is, it's hard to know exactly what measures actually will help.
But obviously, they have to trust their security staff, That's the only thing that they can really do.
And they have to do something. And it seems like they at least aren't just being like, oh, well, this was a horrible tragedy and we don't know what happened, so just forget about it. They're saying, we are trying to do better for you guys. Well, back in Los Angeles, Jenny's family held her memorial service and burial at the Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California, after they brought her body home to them. That same day, San Francisco State University officials announced a potentially crucial finding: that they had determined that a master key that would have opened all the locked doors on campus had been missing since August 10th. But whether it had been innocently lost or deliberately stolen a month earlier, they could not determine.
So yeah, Daff, you may have been onto something there.
Yeah, which is, it's great that they discovered this, but it just makes the pool truly so much bigger. And also, was the stolen key the one? It really just brings more questions because it's not like they said, oh, this key, it belongs to this person, and they said their friend acted weird that night. They don't even know who that key belongs to.
Yeah, and again, this is, the 1970s, so it's not like you're going to have you're not going to be able to scan and it's going to be able to tell who is going into that room. It's just going to scan and open the door. Because back when I was going to college, I went to community college, but we still even had, if you used your card to scan in somewhere, it would tell you, who was trying to open that door. It would say my name, So that's something that is probably a lot more prevalent on campuses today, but not so much back in the 1970s.
Yeah, I'm also kind of almost shocked they even had key cards in that way.
I kind of was shocked as well, to be honest.
So naturally, they're super different. But a few days after Jenny's burial, a memorial was held for her on campus as well, so that local students could mourn her. And actually, more than 200 peers, friends, and faculty showed up to her dorm to plant a tree in her honor. And multiple speeches were made to memorialize her. Dr. Paul F. Romberg again spoke in her honor, saying, quote, "Children do leave home and are called upon to face the world. In many ways, she was a model student, but Jenny is gone. Her life was savagely taken. I call on each of you to make her life a shining example." A reverend who spoke in her honor echoed, quote, "Let us be good to one another in memory of Jenny."
After Jenny's memorial, the case did slow down, though detectives insisted that they remained vigilant in their quest for finding justice for Jenny. Then, on October 28, 1977, so about 6 weeks after she was murdered, the case saw its first and only break. An arrest was made of a library guard for the university.
Library guard.
Now, get this. This guard's name was Floyd McCoy, who was only 23 years old at this time. And weirdly, he does share the same name as the infamous airline hijacker of the 1970s, who is believed to be the true identity behind the still unsolved mystery of airline hijacker D.B. Cooper. But it definitely is a different guy. So
you would. You love D.B. Cooper.
I love the D.B. Cooper story, but yeah, not the same Floyd McCoy that they thought was D.B. Cooper. Now, the type of flagrant violence against women that had been inflicted upon Jenny seemed to match Floyd McCoy's approach towards women, due to something that he did shortly before Jenny's murder, which I will get into here in a sec. But first, Floyd was confirmed to be working for the university at the time of Jenny's death, and was even on duty in the basement library on the evening of Jenny's murder.
And Jenny would have been in the basement library before going to that 4th floor with the locked room.
Exactly. Now, it's conceivable that Jenny entered the basement library to work and that he targeted her, offering to bring her upstairs and then killed her before quickly returning back to his post. And get this, he was fired just over a week after her death on September 19th, but the university did not announce why he was terminated. Though later, it was revealed that he had left a shift unexpectedly, claiming that he hadn't been feeling well. Well, on October 28, 1977, Floyd was finally arrested, but not for Jenny's murder. He was arrested in connection with a different unsolved case from back in July. So that story goes, on July 24th of that same year, 1977, a woman who wanted to remain anonymous in the press described to police that she had been advertising herself as an escort in the Berkeley Barb, which was an underground newspaper, and that she had made a date with a man who asked to meet her on the 4th floor of the SFSU library.
The 4th floor of the San Francisco State University.
And somebody's using this, obviously, to procure a date with an escort, which is insane to think about.
They're trying to meet an escort in the very place that Jenny would be murdered 2 months later. What are the odds?
Yeah, it seems like this is all kind of lining up. So she traveled to this school that we can't even be sure that she attended, and when she arrived, she didn't see anybody. When she eventually left, she noticed a man on the 1st floor whom she later identified as Floyd McCoy. Now, after leaving, the suitor who had stood her up called her back and tried to arrange a liaison for the following day, this time at a home. They planned to meet in front of 23 Collingwood Street, which is just down the road from Floyd's apartment, which is located on 27 Collingwood Street.
It's fucking Floyd.
Yeah, right, exactly. But when she arrived, Floyd pulled a gun on her and attempted to force her inside the home. But thankfully, she did break free and reported it to police the following day on July 26, 1977. And then 3 months later, 23-year-old Floyd McCoy was arrested. He agreed to be photographed by police for the investigation, and the woman plucked Floyd's picture from among 8 images, confirming that he was her attacker. While being questioned prior to his arrest, he broke down in tears and proclaimed his innocence.
Yeah, right. Officially cannot trust this guy.
Yeah, he seems like a huge piece of shit. Well, he was held on $20,000 bail and spent just about a year in jail. So it's obviously no shock that multiple former peers of Jenny's have brought forward claims that they believe Floyd is responsible.
Same.
But without concrete evidence here, he was not arrested for the crime of killing Jenny.
Well, this guy's fuckery continues because after serving time, again, just about a year, for the attempted sexual assault of that woman in July of 1977, Floyd left California for Reno, Nevada, and continued his reign of terror against women. In 1982, 28-ish-year-old Floyd was employed as a fire inspector for the Reno Fire Department. And he apparently attempted to use his clearance as a fire inspector to force his way into the homes of unsuspecting women. And because of his uniform, the women trusted him and allowed him access to their home. But once he was inside, he would force the women into the bathroom and sexually assault them. In one incident, for example, it was a 55-year-old woman, and after he left, the woman called police and reported what she had been through, and she was actually able to offer up not only a description, but his surname, because it had been on clear display on his name badge.
So this fucking idiot wasn't even trying to cover his name when he was committing these sexual assaults.
I'm shaking my head.
Dumbass.
I mean, thankfully, but whoa, bro. So, in court proceedings, Floyd accused the woman of lying, alleging that they had been dating and that the woman was merely a spurned lover who was retaliating against him because he had broken things off. Yeah, it's always everybody else. It's never Floyd.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, so I had broken things off with this woman, so she wanted to attack me, and I sexually assaulted her? Like, what?
No, he's saying, like, she's making it up entirely.
No, I get that, but it's like he's making himself out to be the victim in the situation.
Yeah.
He's making himself the guy that is scorned by the situation.
Yeah, he's saying, she's lying. I didn't assault her. She's just mad because I broke up with her. This is a 55-year-old woman and you're 28.
Yeah,
it's like,
bro.
Okay, maybe, but it's just, he's never admitting to anything. He's like you said, he broke down into tears after he attacked that woman and said that she was lying. Like, he's not the guy that takes responsibility. And I wish so badly we knew more about his childhood, because I'm sure he did that his whole life.
Yeah, and I'd love to know even more about Floyd and his adventures through life, because I'm sure that there was probably a lot more victims than what is known.
I know. We really don't know much about him. Like, I couldn't even find an obituary after he passed. Sorry, he did pass. Not to spoil. We'll get there later. But I couldn't find, like, anything on this guy. There's one picture of him. It's like an old, grainy newspaper clipping image. That's what I'm saying. I so wish we knew more. Because also, to the dismay of the victim and all of us, 2 separate trials ended in a hung jury, and Floyd McCoy went free. The victim later filed a lawsuit against the city of Reno and the Reno Fire Department, saying that they had hired a man who was a safety threat and then failed to hold him accountable. Like, this is 2 positions of power that he has abused in just a handful of years.
It kind of seems like this is this guy's shtick. Like,
Yeah.
he finds jobs where he can be in power. That way he can just abuse it and take advantage of women.
Fully believe that. So this lawsuit read, quote, "Plaintiff is also informed the Reno Fire Department has prior knowledge of the defendant, Floyd McCoy's propensities to be violent. And despite that knowledge and information, the defendant, Reno Fire Department, failed to promptly supervise said fire officer Floyd McCoy." The lawsuit also alleged that he had inflicted deep mental and emotional anguish on this woman, and that she suffered from a feeling of perpetual degradation and disgust, as well as reoccurring nightmares about Floyd.
Now, obviously, because we don't know exactly who took Jenny's life, it is important to kind of talk about some other possible suspects here, even though I will say a lot of these potential suspects are pretty far-fetched, such as one of the many serial killers active in the area at the time, in a decade where they were more rife than ever in the United States, and a city that had a higher concentration than most. As we went into in our recent episode on Anne Marie Burr, serial killers are often the scapegoats for random acts of violence that remain unsolved. But in this case, 1970s San Francisco saw more than its fair share of active serial killers, including the Zebra Murders, the Zodiac Killer, the Doodler, and also the Trailside Killer. Jenny's murder doesn't quite fit the MO of most of these murderers, but the Zodiac is always mentioned in discourse about Jenny's case because He was active at the very same time and was a ruthless and very sadistic killer, as Jenny's murderer had been. However, the scene of the crime was not fitting of the Zodiac's typical style. There were no hints or calling cards to indicate that he had any involvement. And again, even if he was the murderer, he would have needed to obtain a key to access the 4th floor reading room.
Yeah, and it's funny, with David Toshke on the case, the guy would know.
Yeah, and maybe David Toshke was just thinking, hey, we've got this guy already terrorizing the city that I'm, and I'm on that specific case. Could it be the same dude, Well, with no known ties to faculty at San Francisco State at the time, if you believe the Zodiac is Arthur Lee Allen, because we do, it's unlikely that he would have been able to gain access to the room.
It all comes back to that key card.
Well, 2 other California serial killers were also active at the time, and though they have no confirmed victims in San Francisco, they are believed to have more victims than investigators are aware of. Joseph D'Angelo, better known as the Golden State Killer, terrorized Central and Southern California between 1974 and 1986, claiming at least 13 victims, not to mention the dozens of rapes that he was responsible for.
Yeah, and then the other one is Rodney Alcala, the dating game killer. But we won't even go into him because, again, it's just they're scapegoats that people are saying, oh, these other serial killers were active in the area or in the state at the time. Is it possible? Sure. Is it likely? No.
Well, and I understand why their minds are going towards serial killers because obviously, again, this was a massive time for serial killers. 1970s California was actually kind of fucking crazy.
No, the age of the serial killer,
yeah,
literally, and the location.
Yeah, so I can understand why people are going there, but that doesn't mean that an isolated incident has to be, a crime committed by a serial killer.
Exactly. And these are just some of the many rumors and thoughts that were swirling around Jenny's case, understandably so, by terrified San Franciscans and Californians. But on top of what Heath is saying, some were wondering if Jenny had fallen prey to gang violence. Maybe she was caught in the crossfire of a handful of rival feuding Chinatown gangs.
That just honestly sounds like a silly movie.
Yeah, I agree.
Come on, Jenny was the sweetest, most responsible girl. There's just no way that she would be involved in something like that.
No, and that's what's so weird too, but so many locals were saying, hey, because just days before she was killed on September 4th, 1997.
1977.
Or sorry, yeah, 1977, sorry. A confrontation took place between 2 of these gangs inside a Chinese restaurant in the area in San Francisco. And so people are saying, oh, maybe it had to do with that. And it's just because she's Chinese doesn't mean she's caught up with Chinatown gangs. That's,
yeah,
guys.
And there was 5 victims during this altercation that happened between these gangs. But I feel like the MO would be very, very different.
Well, yeah, they're going to come to the school and lure her into a key card access only room in the library and then brutally murder her. No.
I just wonder what the kind of leading factor of this rumor was. Where did it come from?
Again, I think it's the Chinese angle. I think it's just a bunch of people being oh, hey, she's Chinese. They're Chinese.
Oh, yeah.
Guys. But, the detectives and the police were no, that's insane. And they did look into it, of course, as far as they could, but they did not believe at all that there was any connection here. They knew that this was a totally separate incident. Well, in the wake of the 40th anniversary of Jenny's death, one San Francisco area reporter, Ellen Chen, attempted to revive the search efforts for Jenny's killer. In 2017, a Cantonese news channel, KTSF News in San Francisco, ran a story on the case, reported on by Ellen Chen herself. Jenny's brother Eddie told Ellen in a phone interview, quote, "It's a sad part of our lives. I certainly would like to see closure to this, certainly before I die. So I would encourage it and I would support it, and I would provide any cooperation to any of the authorities necessary." According to Ellen's investigative efforts, Floyd's father was employed by the police department of another city. And she believes it was possible that when Jenny's murder investigation was elevated from campus police to the San Francisco Police Department, his father may have used his connections to help cover for his son.
Yeah, maybe he was pulling some strings behind the scenes.
That's a really interesting note, I feel. But regardless of whether corruption is to blame for the lack of an arrest or if it's merely the lack of evidence, her family is still being left without answers, yet they continue to believe that it likely was Floyd. Around the same time as Ellen mounted her own investigation, a graduate student at San Francisco State University named Sergio Romero began one of his own. And while browsing through old issues of the school newspaper, Sergio discovered that one issue in particular was missing from the school's archives, which I imagine were found in the library. And get this, the missing issue is the one that announced the assault of that woman at the hands of Floyd McCoy shortly before Jenny's murder, and announced the fact that he was on duty in the very basement library that she was bound for on the night of Jenny's murder, and that he was fired a week later.
So we've got this missing issue where there's just no record of any of that happening.
Yeah, it seems, in my opinion, like Floyd might have gotten rid of that archive. He got rid of that newspaper piece because he's like, oh, I don't want this here because this is me. And I think this kind of could say a lot, that he, working as a library guard, working security there, he knew. He worked there for months at the very least. He knew when people were and weren't there. He knew when the faculty room would be empty. He knew where to find people. He knew where to be secretive. And so I think about the fact that he lured that woman from the Berkeley Barb to the 4th floor of the library. Specifically, I think that he knew that that room was very quiet in the nighttime hours, and whether somebody happened to be there the night that he had asked that woman to meet him there and he chickened out and decided to change locations or what, this says everything to me.
Yeah, was it a scenario of him coming upon Jenny and saying like, hey, like, I'm a security guard. Guess what? I know that they have typewriters in this specific room, so if you want a quiet place to do your research and your writing, I can definitely help you out with that. And then he just manipulated her, took advantage of her, and killed her.
Yeah, because clearly he's violent towards women. He probably has a distaste towards women. Maybe he knew of Jenny because she studied at the library quite a bit. Maybe he didn't. Either way, I truly believe that he lured her into that room with evil intentions and that he knew no one was going to walk in.
Well, sadly, both of Jenny's parents died without seeing resolution in her case. Her brother Eddie even obtained a private investigator, hoping to shed new light on the case, but this sadly led nowhere. With advances in DNA testing, we can still kind of hold out hope that a perpetrator could be found, even now, nearly 50 years later. You know, and hopefully there is still some semblance of that DNA that was taken from her clothes that could be tested today, because obviously we've got genealogical testing, and there was seminal fluid left behind, but we don't know if it was stored properly. We don't know if it was destroyed or if it's even, Yeah,
because, well, in the 70s, they really didn't know what was to come in the future.
Right.
But like you're saying, having that evidence could make it, it would make all the difference, I think. And for anybody who might be asking themselves, we don't know if Floyd's DNA was tested against the seminal fluid that was found at the scene ever. Considering he was never an official suspect, I doubt it. Also, we don't know if they had that evidence from him because, sorry, Heath, as you're about to say, he died in 2002.
Well, if they do still have some of that DNA that was left behind, I do think that they should go towards genealogical testing, because even if Floyd McCoy is dead, they can somehow trace it to a family member and then connect it back to Floyd McCoy.
Right, and have they done that? We just don't know.
I don't know, but I hope that they do.
I know, me too.
Well, following Ellen's report, the San Francisco Police Department vowed that they would take a second look at the evidence in the case, but there have been no developments since. In August of 2017, Ellen emailed David Toschi ahead of her upcoming report marking the 40th anniversary of Jenny's murder. And she did receive a response, but it was not from Dave Toschi. It was actually from his daughter Linda instead, and it read, quote, "I'm writing to you today on behalf of my father, David Toschi. He has received your letter. Unfortunately, my father no longer gives interviews or speaks with the press. However, he does remember the Jenny Chang case very well from the library at San Francisco State University. He wanted me to let you know that there was a person of interest at the time, but there was insufficient evidence to proceed with that particular suspect. We wish you all the best with your investigation. Thank you for reaching out and your understanding of my father's wishes to remain out of the media." And I completely understand this because Dave Toschi spent so many years working on the Zodiac case that still remains unsolved to this day. So at this point, he's retired. He just kind of wants to be left out of the limelight, so I do get that. But just so you guys know also, David did pass away just 5 months later. And it seems even David thought it was Floyd, especially due to his criminal history against women and the fact that he was on duty the night of the murder. Well, frustratingly, as Daphne mentioned, Floyd did pass away in 2002 without ever coming clean about his potential involvement in Jenny's murder or any other crimes against women.
Jenny's tree that was planted near her dorm has since fallen down and the library was renamed, though a plaque memorializing her is still present on campus. In October of 1977, the Women in Science organization at San Francisco State University established a scholarship in her name. And according to the organization at the time of its founding, the scholarship was meant for a student who will use their education and degree to, quote, advance the position of women. The Jenny Low Chang Memorial Scholarship remains at SFSU today. If you have any information about the murder of Jenny Low Chang, please call the anonymous tip line at 415-553-1166. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to this episode of Going West.
Yes, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. Please make sure that you share it. Also, if you want to see photos from this case, head on over to our socials. Give us a follow. We're at Instagram at Going West Podcast. We're also on TikTok now, which is awesome. Daphne's making some really amazing videos over there.
Thanks.
And then we're also on Facebook.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. What a mysterious case. But again, Heath, I think you and I very much agree here.
It's fucking Floyd McCoy.
It's fucking Floyd. And we would love to hear if you guys agree. So please comment on our socials. Don't forget to share this one, especially if you live in San Francisco. It's not too late. Resolution can still come for Jenny's brothers and her sister, who very much want resolution here and deserve resolution here for Jenny's brutal murder. All right, guys, we will see you on Tuesday.
All right, guys, so for...
Sorry.
You stole my line again.
I just know your line so well.
You do. All right, guys, so for everybody out there in the world...
Don't be a stranger.
I should start saying, don't be a stranger.
I welcome it, please.